सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते सम्प्राप्ते सन्निहिते काले।
Welcome to Culture Nepal, and today I have a very special guest from Acton, our own Actonian, and she is young, vibrant, and so much talented, or she has so much other diverse perspective for future. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And I'm so happy to welcome you in Culture Nepal, especially being an immigrant mother and having a child, second generation American. I'm so happy and thrilled that I will be learning so much from you today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasure being here, and I'm so excited to talk with you as well.
Thank you for your time. So let's begin with your brief introduction and background, your cultural background, your childhood upbringing and all.
Absolutely. For me, I always say that the story of myself really starts with the story of my parents, which is so true for many of us who have immigrant families and backgrounds. So my dad grew up in a small rural village called Patapalli, and my mom grew up in a town called Kurnool in Andhra Pradesh in India, which is a state kind of in the southern part of India, and that's where they lived for the majority of their lives until they were 24, 25. My dad then decided to try to find a job elsewhere. He wasn't able to find employment in India. There were very few spots that were available for him, and so he traveled to Malaysia to find a teaching job. He then went to Singapore and then jumped to Canada, and then from Canada came to the US, and his first job in America was working at Chicago Tribune. And that's kind of where he learned more about learned more about the American way of life, and that was something that really appealed to him, just knowing that people here valued his hard work and gave him the time of day and gave him the respect, and that was new to him. That wasn't something he had experienced before, and so he decided to settle here. And then my mom came over on a visa, and they got their citizenship when I was in 3rd grade or 4th grade. And my sister was in 1st grade. And it was such a big experience, going to school the next day and just realizing, like, my parents are citizens and I'm a citizen, and we're American citizens, like, we're here, we belong. And my sister's teacher, who I had when I was in 1st grade, gave us both American flags to kind of like, celebrate the day, and it was truly the best feeling. And for me growing up, I've always loved living here in many ways. I think that Acton has been good to my family and I. I attended K through 12 here. It was a good experience, but there were definitely some things that I felt those incongruencies with. It was in the small things, to be honest. It was me, not feeling comfortable to open up my lunchbox during my lunchtime because it was strong Indian curry. Like, no one's gonna understand this.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was in the small things of, I remember this one time I was in my history class, and he was doing like an icebreaker activity. He was like, okay, everyone gather around, like, we're just gonna, share things about ourselves, like, what's your favorite music? And everyone went around and shared their favorite music. And at the time, I was, and still am, a huge fan of MS Subbulakshmi and that kind of classical vocalist that she is, and she's so inspiring to me. And I wanted to say her name, and I remember in that second thinking, no, I don't feel comfortable saying that. And I just ended up defaulting to Taylor Swift, who I love, but I was like, it's not the same.
Yes.
And it was in the small things like that. And it didn't really hit me how uncomfortable I felt being Indian, talking about being Indian, you know, talking about my background until I came to UConn for my undergraduate.
Wow.
And I remember sitting in my first sociology class and thinking to myself, this is what I've been feeling. Like, you know, this whole concept of, you know, these sociological concepts of not feeling in place and,
Right.
you know, being part of a minority and what that means and why, you know, so many of the structures that I've lived through, the school structure, the community structure, all these social structures and all these institutional structures, they have been made for the white person.
Right.
They have been made with the white man in mind.
Right.
And me being in that space is the reason why I feel uncomfortable. Because it's in the small things, it's in the big things.
Yeah.
But it's not even small, because ultimately it leads to a feeling of me as an Indian American not feeling comfortable and not feeling truly at home in a place that I've only known to have ever called my home. And I think that was the moment where I was like, there needs to be so much change in this, and that change needs to start at all levels. And, you know, that's kind of why I've done what I've done, but that's my cultural background.
Yes, so you were born and raised in Acton or somewhere else, and you moved to Acton?
I was born in Winchester,
Oh, wow.
and then did preschool in Burlington, and then my
Wow.
parents really came here for the schools. That was the
Yes.
big thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so that's the part. I think education is very important for
Yes.
Asian Americans generation, no matter where you come from, you know, India, China, or, you know, when you, that's my say is, when somebody say Asian, they only think it's India and China. Well, I am from Nepal.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's so much to bring and educate people here, and it's not, you know, nobody knows everything, and I feel very happy to be able to come here and be able to share and show a different perspective of life. So I always thought being an immigrant is a strength of America, and that's why I came. And in both sides, I'm learning a lot, but also I want to be able to feel that I'm contributing to the country. But sometimes, like you said, because you have such a minority voice and so much out of difference of, like, food, for example, it smells different. You know, I didn't like the smell of seafood before, but I get used to it out of respect or, you know, understanding. But Indian food, you feel, for a child, I'm sure if you feel intimidated, and I do have that experience with my son.
Yeah.
He never wanted to take lunch at school.
Yes.
And so I had to feed him all food in the morning for breakfast so that he can buy lunch, and he was the best customer for cafeteria. So I can, I'm glad that I hear that from you as well. It's because I didn't understand for a long time, why wouldn't he want to take lunch? And I'm working hard to keep him healthy. And here I am working day and night, and then he just opposed what I'm doing. And, you know, I was, I had a struggle at home.
School lunches were always a huge deal. Like,
Yes.
for myself, my sister, and my brother, we would always push back against taking Indian food. And it was really only in high school where I started embracing my Indian
Yes.
food, and really, like, and it really just came with being surrounded by people who also had immigrant families.
Yes.
And that's what I gravitated toward, because those were the people that understood, you know, the importance of our food, you know, in
How healthy
respecting
it
our
is.
culture, yes, and how
Yeah.
it makes us feel comfortable in an environment where oftentimes we feel out of place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, interesting thing is, how do you feel about your name? Because I had that issue as a mom, as a first generation. Now I'm asking the second generation, how did you feel about your name? Because I was afraid that my son gonna hate his name, and he's gonna be made fun of it. But the surprising part is he already, Acton, I love Acton for that matter, and then I appreciate the Indian American working so hard to make, you know, somebody like me also comfortable, because there was a name my son's name is Ashish, and there was a name, somebody already in senior class as well as junior class. So I was like so pleasantly surprised, that such a big relief that he didn't feel like he's the only one whose name is Ashish, you know. But what about Himaja? Himaja is kind of very pretty and unique name as well. Did you feel comfortable with your name?
For the longest time, I didn't. And it's such a shame because my grandma named me. And she named me, so Himaja is another name for the goddess Parvati, who...
Really?
Yeah!
I didn't know even myself.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And she named me that because it was snowing on the day. And for people who don't know, Parvati is, she's a goddess, and she lives in the Himalayas, as we believe, and so she's so closely associated with that. And it was so, and I love my name. It's like you said, it's a very unique name. I haven't ever come across another Himaja in my life, so I'm like looking out for him, like if anyone's
even being a Hindu, I have a background of Hindu and Sanatani Hindu background, but even I did not know Himaja means Parvati, and I'm so thrilled because. Tell us about Parvati, because everybody thought that Hindu religion has this discrimination against women, whereas I never felt that way. I always felt that women are well respected, they have their place, but they were powerful, well respected, and I was very comfortable in my gender. How about you? Like, do you know anything about Parvati, or how do you feel as a woman in that culture? Yeah,
it's very interesting because I was just having a conversation about this with someone else. But I think that, I think when you look at India and you look at the US, for example, it's a very patriarchal society, and I think women have a lot of systemic issues that they have to fight against to just even get an equal voice at the table, an equal seat at the table, to just have their values or their perspectives valued. But I think that when I look at Hinduism, and that's the religion that I personally practice, and for me, one of the things I love about it is, you're right, you have, these incredible goddesses, and you have them championing change in many ways. We hear the stories like from our childhood of like, Durga, who's like this like fierce warrior avatar of Parvati, going out and really ridding the world of evil. So I think that, especially in Hinduism, that's something I've loved, is just hearing the stories and that to me also just taught me a lot about woman empowerment and how, women should be empowered, and I think that's something I've absolutely loved about it. But Himaja it's one of those things. I absolutely love my name, and for the longest time, even when I was like in the AB schools, like I would never correct people about my name because I was like, they're just gonna keep getting it wrong. Like I've had places where I've known teachers for years and they'll still get my name wrong even after I correct them. But I think it was someone who had told me, and it was in a conversation that I was having, like, I was saying like, isn't it exhausting to keep like, saying your name? And they were like, it's a burden that we shouldn't have to face, to be honest, but it's something that we should still keep correcting people about because our name in so many ways is our identity. It's what we ground ourselves in. It's so much of who we are and who we see ourselves as, that it makes that we have to be vocal about it. We can't just be like, it's fine if they call me Himaja or something, but to really be like, oh, it's Himaja, like, this is how I pronounce my name, and, this is what it means, and this is why it's significant to me. And that's something that, and my sister and my brother also have pretty unique names. My sister's name is Srija. So Lakshmi Mata, so she's always had to like deal with people calling her Sarija and like all those variations. And then my brother's name is Rama, and it's the running joke of our family. Everyone can pronounce his name. It's the funniest thing. Like everyone can pronounce his name.
It's me.
We're like the one name, and he gets it right.
So no, I totally agree with that. Actually, my name nobody can pronounce. Not even from Nepal, because it has a very weird last alphabet, Ara, actually, Ara. Even, I think I just remember only the person who pronounced my name correctly is the one who gave me the name, which is my father's aunt. And I keep teasing my son. It doesn't matter. I understand. Just acknowledge that it's a difficult name and nobody can pronounce. That's fine. The point is the respect of the differences. So like name is a name. There's a lot of circumstances. There's a meaning to it. Everything, and not being able to pronounce sometimes is okay, as long as they recognize it. Oh yeah, I can pronounce this name, but this is a different culture, and respect to the culture and the name. But making fun is another issue. That's what it's intolerable to me, and that's what I was worried about. My son's name, I was worried that, but it turned out to be fine, and he loves his name, and he understands the meaning. So, and then it went smoothly, but not for everybody. So, I really appreciate you coming out and working for the community level. But let's go back to Acton. So, having all these difficulties because of your background, what are the good things and things that you enjoy in Acton, and the strength of Acton and yourself, because you had definitely some struggles to do, but at the same time, I'm sure there were something that you could enjoy and glad that you had a difference.
Absolutely. No, it's me, my sister, and my brother have lived here our whole lives. Acton is our home, and it's always going to be our home. And I think that, and one of the reasons why we're so confident in that is because overall our experiences have been good. And I think that, and it's one of those things where, for me as an activist, I always look through things in the lens of what can we change. But I think one of the reasons why a lot of student activists like myself look at that is because we care so deeply about the environment we're in. And that's why we work so hard to benefit, to improve it, and to really make sure that everyone has a great lived experience. And for me, I think I was really blessed in many ways to have had a good AB experience. I made some really amazing lifelong friends. I educated through the system, and for me, it's so heartwarming to be able to come back here and to give back to my community, and to realize that Acton in many ways had shaped my childhood and had set this foundation of public service, of education, of this strong core fundamental desire to give back. Acton had set all of that up. And so it's really great to be able to give back to a community that's given me so much. And I think, and for the most part, one of the things that I've absolutely loved about Acton is you have so many people who recognize that, there's so much potential in how we can improve things, and there's already so much work that's been done. It's been amazing, for example, to see Acton be a leader in climate action, the first in the state in many ways to do so many climate initiatives. And I think that, that's just one thing. And then our efforts around trying to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion. The fact that these conversations are happening now, in many ways, it's too late. Or it's not too late, but it's very late. But it's not too late, I would say, in the sense that, these are systemic issues that have happened for hundreds of years, but at least we're talking about it now, and Acton has provided that platform to talk about it. And I think we're moving forward in a really positive way. So there's so many benefits to living here. And especially for my parents, for us, this is the entire community that we've known. And so our positives and negatives are based in this community. And when I talk with my parents, sometimes they'll tell me, like, why are you complaining about X, Y, and Z? Because for them, they lived through poverty. They lived through not having access to adequate water and basic needs. And they lived with housing insecurity. They lived with, not knowing what their futures looked like, not having the ability to buy quality food for their family. And so for them, it's very hard to talk about Acton from, these are the problems we need to solve with them, because for them, their entire perspective is, Acton has given us so much, and we've created a community here.
Right.
And it's very interesting to kind of see that difference
Yeah.
in thought. And I think each is equally valid. Each has a valuable perspective. And I've learned so much just from talking to my parents
Right.
about what their experiences like are as an immigrant.
Right, and then in that aspects, I can share my perspective, because what I felt is looking from their side. I don't know about India much, because India is still a different country with more populations,
Yeah.
and it's also sad side of India is also it was ruled by British.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things went on. While Nepal is a very small country, but luckily we were not ruled by other country. So there was some different perspective that we could keep, continuing. And so now with this, 21st century influence in the world, people are going out and learning more. But luckily I get an opportunity to live in both side of the world. And so one of the things what I felt is this economic development in Western country, which is major influence of industrialized, product, is sometimes it's a little too much, like plastics, which
my
I never
gosh.
grew up. I never grew up with television and electronics, and it's too fast, And so sometimes we lose that perspective of our basic value, basic system, and I think saying poor is in terms of what they have in material is different than saying poor in terms of what you have in mind and heart. And I think that's a very different conflicting issues. And I think what I see is for you guys as a young generation now, I think you're trying to find that balance between the materialistic world and the spiritual world. And we can go on and on that, but I feel that coming from Nepal, that word poor country itself has a problem.
1000%.
And so I think what they're trying to do is, and I think I grew up as, again, going back to Sanatani Hindu culture, at least in Nepal, we were taught to tolerate. Just like how you feel uncomfortable about your name, but you let go because you can't really, make everybody correct your name. So I think we tolerate sometimes a lot, and I think that's what their, greatness comes. They want to tolerate, they want to be appreciated, they want to focus on only good side. But for you, new generation, you want to make it better because you're afraid there might not be water for next generation, who knows, and you want to protect that. So I think coming together to understand each other's perspective and having discussions again, is a great start, I think. And I'm so hopeful, I'm so happy to meet young people like you, who's working hard with all this difficult time like COVID, So I'm really glad that you brought that question, and I hope your parents will listen to you and kind of let you do that work, hard work. As a parent, I'm sure they're protective of you. You don't want to go through that heartburn, right?
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility. How do you feel about taking that kind of responsibility? What is your, by the way, what is your focus on your studies? I know you go to Harvard. Tell me about your venture from high school to college. Why did you choose Harvard?
Sure, and even just to kind of address the things that you said, I 1000% agree. And one thing that I've always thought to myself is, especially for people like my parents and for yourself who literally had to upend their entire life to come here, you have to learn tolerance. And it's not, it's a survival instinct, because you in so many ways have had to beat so many systems to get to a place, to work really, to get to the bottom up, to really establish a life for yourself and your family. And I think for us, and I see it really as the responsibility of our generation who have been given, all these resources and who are really kind of sitting on the shoulders of our parents to really be the ones advocating for that change. Because you know, it's our time and we have the energy and we have the capability and we have the resources that our parents, you know, have led us to be able to do the good work.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a responsibility that I see for myself. And, you know, for my parents, you know, for them, this whole process honestly has been a huge change for them. My dad was like, no one knew us in this town for the past 19 years. Like, this
Yes.
is crazy. And it's because for them, it took every fiber of their body, like
Yes.
every moment that they had to really work toward creating a future. Like, you know, and it's in the small things I see. They constantly sacrifice for my sister, brother, and I.
Yeah.
We haven't been to a restaurant in 25 years as a
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Not once. Even like the clothes that we wear are oftentimes secondhanded. You know, my dad, you know, and my mom, they barely buy any things for themselves, only the bare necessities.
Right.
And I see it in the small things they make to like put some extra money in the bank for us to go to college. And so, you know, and going back to college, yeah, I think one of the things that, you know, was so incredible for me is, you know, they gave me that support in every aspect. And from high school, I went to the University of Connecticut for my undergraduate, where I was a triple degree in physiology and neurobiology, molecular and cell biology, and sociology, with a double minor in chemistry and bioinformatics. And yeah, it's
Wow.
all because of them, and it really is. They would always come up on weekends and bring a ton of Indian food, and I'd be like, Mom and Dad, I have a cavity. Like, we have food.
Yes.
But they would be so worried that, like,
Yes.
you know, I wasn't eating, and so they would just bring all this
Yes.
food for me. So it was really through their sacrifices, and my sister and my brother too, their support. And I'm currently a Master's of Science student now, studying environmental health epidemiology with a concentration in infectious disease epidemiology, pending, but hopefully will be declared soon. And my thesis work focuses on air pollution and its effect on COVID-19 transmission and burden in the greater Boston area. So the past few years have been a huge, enriching academic experience and journey. And if there's things that I've pulled from that is, you know, having a perspective grounded in data and looking at the evidence and making decisions based on that, that type of process can really be applied to everything. And that's something that I've learned and recognized more so now than ever.
Right. That's so okay. So you basically environmental and the health system is your focus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like looking at things like environmental contaminants, like, so for example, we were talking about water.
Right.
So one of my research interests is in PFAS, which stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. And it's a contaminant that's been found in water across the U.S. EWG, which is the Environmental Working Group, states that 98% of Americans have found PFAS in their blood. And so it's one of those things that's very widespread. And so environmental health is looking at the health effects of that, and from a public health perspective, how do we form interventions?
Oh wow, yeah, that's big. And I always was interested in water resource management, and now, you know, at this point of my life, I could see that there is a developmental aspects of water resource management, which is building electric generation and, you know, electricity generation dam and stuff like that. But then now the question is drinking water, which is supposed to be healthy. So there's so much to talk about, Himaja. I think we're not gonna be able to cover everything that we want to talk about at this time. But you've been such a great success about your let's say your basic professional path, and you give a lot of importance to the support you got from your parents. So coming from, again, as an immigrant parent myself, I had my struggle to raise my son, and I just have one child, and I don't know how I survived. But I went through a constant confusion about taking care of my child in a way I was believed to take care, because, you know, in our culture, family responsibility is the number one responsibility.
Yes.
And so in my case, I came to study, and then work in a water resource management, which I didn't happen. You know, I work a little bit in electrical utility company, but then I stayed home to take care of my son. And I was constantly battered about it internally and externally, okay? And I don't think I could guide my son the way your parents did. I don't know, you know, how
I'm
he's
sure
going to
you
turn out
did.
to be, but he definitely didn't end up going to a university that I thought, you know, would be good for him to meet his potential and stuff like that. And I mean, I just left him for his own, with his own device. But the reason I did that is I was afraid to tell him to study even, because I thought that people were looking at me and saying, I'm pressuring my son to study. And I'm like, I shouldn't do that. But internally, I know that I needed to give him a guidance, because nobody come with the map. You can throw your child in an ocean and they can hopefully survive paddling by themselves, or you can teach the swimming lesson and send them, right? And so I had a very, very difficult time raising my child in America, honestly, in Acton especially, because I had constant pressure to be liberal, at the same time constant pressure with our cultural value to focus on education and health and well-being and tell your child what to do. And I feel I failed, honestly, to do the best, to do the thing I envisioned to do. I mean, I did do the best I could.
Yeah.
At this point, I just want to know, what is your suggestion to somebody like me as an immigrant mom to do the best for the child in this environment? Because I think we need to learn ourselves how can we make our children comfortable at home and build that confidence to do the best they can without getting penalized or punished from the society that is a little different, because you're never right, you're constantly wrong. So what is your, if you have to give your suggestion to somebody, like if you have to, let's say, let me phrase this way. I wrote it down actually. If you could tell one old self on piece of advice to yourself and your parents, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you definitely have not failed. It is one of the hardest things to do parenting. And my mom told me, she was like, you have no idea how hard it is to be a parent until you've actually been one.
Yes,
And,
that's
that's like the base, right? That's like what everyone says. So there's truly no advice I can give, or I have any place to give. But I would say if there's anything that I would tell my younger self, and I 100% get you about the education thing. When going through the AB school system, I had really high aspirations of where I wanted to go to college. And, when I ended up at UConn, I kind of had this identity crisis, because I was like, I love this school, I love this environment, but it doesn't meet the standards that I've been expected to, as society believed this is where I should go to college for the best education. So it took a lot of deprogramming for me. And I think if there's any advice I would give my younger self, it's, believe in yourself, and you just have to trust yourself, and you have to trust the process. Not everyone is going to have the privileges associated with certain things that come, for example, with a top college education, but there have been people who have been given what they were given, and in their own capacity worked some magic and just were able to thrive. So I would tell myself not to worry too much, and I would tell myself, trust in the process, and just believe in yourself, and take every day as a day to do good. So wake up in the morning and just tell yourself, today I'm going to do some good, and as long as you can go to bed at night thinking to yourself, I've done some good in the day, then that's good. Like that should be your criteria for how you define success.
Yeah, and that resonates very American spirit, and that's what is a strength that for living here, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Yeah. So moving forward and for future, what is your future plan for yourself, and where do you see yourself in 5 years to 10 years?
Yeah, I see myself I truly don't know. And this scares my brother because my brother is the planner of the household.
Yeah.
So he has it mapped like 15, 20 years in advance what he wants to do.
Yeah.
For me, I'm a very free-flowing spirit. And he's like, Himaja, you need a plan. Like, you need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
For me, I see myself doing some type of work in public service. And I see myself continuing to do something in the STEM field. I think it would be amazing to work in for example, the state government as an employee doing work, crunching the data, helping to put together policy briefs and things like that, to influence public health and environmental changes in our community. And I think that's kind of where I lean toward when I see myself. I see myself in whatever capacity I'm doing, grounded in public service. But I also, one of the most incredible things that has happened over the past few months has been just the opportunity to meet so many young people and also help them on their journeys. And not even help because I feel like that seems so top bottom, but really just be a resource and make myself available so that people can use their own potential to grow and thrive, and to know that they have support along their way as they're being their best self. And so for me, I continue seeing that as a way that I can give to my community as well moving forward.
Yeah, and for the student in AB or any other parts of the country, what piece of advice you would give to the school system or education system to, I mean, you are incredible. You're such a great student, but there are some students who are struggling, to be where they want to be for various reasons, whatever reason. So, is there any advice to, bring into some solution to other people who are not doing so well in a school system, so that they can be part of this process of making this world better?
Yeah.
So, is there any?
I would say, and this kind of goes back to what I would tell my younger self, but I want to say you have power. You have the ability to change things not only for yourself, but for your people. And don't let anything tell you otherwise. Don't let people who put you down tell you otherwise. Don't listen to the people, who, may try to stifle your voice, or who may not believe in your worth, and who may not believe your voice matters. For me, growing up, I had a huge, and this is something I still struggle with, is public speaking. I have a really huge fear of public speaking, and it shows when I'm in a room with more than 10 people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem that way.
It's practice, but it's really, I wish I could tell my younger self and just give her a hug and be like, it doesn't matter, how you're communicating it, or you don't have to worry about your fears of public speaking, and you don't have to worry about sounding perfect, because your voice still matters. It doesn't matter what background you come from. It doesn't matter how you say it. It doesn't matter, about any of those things. At the end of the day, what you're saying, the content of it matters, because it has weight, because it's based on your lived experiences, and that in itself gives it worth. And that's something that I've been trying to push really hard, because a lot of young people, they look at, seasoned politicians who have had years and years of talking experience and know how to carry themselves in front of a crowd. And me and countless others think to ourselves, we can't do that. So why does our voice matter in these spaces? We would never be able to say that as eloquently as like so-and-so. But truly, that shouldn't be the most important thing, and it isn't the most important thing. So I would say, be the change you want to see in the world, like Mahatma Gandhi said. Just just be empowered and speak your truth. And if someone is wise enough to listen to the content of your voices and the content of your words, that change will happen. And if someone is not wise, and if there's not a single wise person in the room, then just advocate for that change. And people like myself and you are here to support in any way that we can. There's always support when you look for it.
Yes, and I think things will happen slowly, but for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, and then I look forward to having you in Acton for many more years, and make Actonians proud, and be a leader in environmental and public health.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have to say, you're such an inspiration to just, spending this time talking with me, and it's always such a relief talking with someone who gets it and who understands kind of where we're coming from, and how this shapes our lived experiences and our perspectives. So it's always a breath of fresh air, so thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It's such a nice to have you, and then I look forward to see you more for the work you do in water resource management or environmental protection or diversity inclusion. Those are two of my favorite subjects that I never thought I'll be working on, but I really have that passion now to work on that.
Those are my two top passions too, so
Excellent.
we'll talk.
Yes, look forward to see you again. So anything at the end you would like to close our conversation today?
Any last remarks? I would say, it was just so wonderful talking. And I'm always here, always available if people want to reach out.
Yes.
And so many others are also equally excited to reach out. We are here to uplift people's voices and perspectives. And I'm not going to have all the answers, and other people aren't going to have all the answers. But we're working together to learn the answers.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the key thing. And so always feel free to reach out. For whoever's listening, it's something that we're here to do. So yeah.
And I hope all the best for anything you do. You have such a great spirit and great talent, and striving to make things better. So, bringing the solutions to the problem, that's the key to us. And then working together collaboratively, all the good stuff. I'm so thrilled. I'm so happy you made a time today, and I look forward to have more and more in future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, all the best.
Thank you.
स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते